I apologize in advance that this video will probably be blurry and really quiet, but my kids are sleeping, which is my best time to do these aha moments. I think the part of this week that kind of stood out to me was in our book, Dr. Ossett's story about Marcy. I think in a lot of ways that could have been a story about any teenage girl that I knew, including myself. I'm definitely of a younger, I guess older generation than he's writing about. Published the book in 2008, so I'm assuming he was probably talking a lot about people who were in their teens, 16, 15, 14, in like 2003, 2004, which isn't totally off from where I was. I graduated from high school in 2001. So I think a lot of the stuff that he was talking about, IMing. I didn't have a cell phone, but I had a phone in my room, like a landline. And I think that I identified with a lot of that. Not so much the oversaturation of social media. And it got me thinking about what is so different than, because reading about the Marcy character or whatever, I identified wanting to change, feeling like my parents didn't understand me, and I wasn't oversaturated or anything, but I do think about my cousins who are 18 now, and I follow them on Instagram, and it makes me think a lot about how different I would have been if I had been trying to come to terms with my identity and who I was and what was cool, I guess. It would have been really overstimulating to have so much external input on something like that. And I can kind of see that in my cousins. One in particular posts videos, her pictures every day. She dresses very hip. She convinced her parents to give her a credit card that she makes half of the monthly payments on, which I guess is better than some kids, but she racks up as much as she can on her parents' credit limit for that card, and she has Gucci belts and all this stuff. I, as a teenager, wanted to be cool or interesting, pretty, like everybody in the magazines or on the movies. And I think that the difference between me not having access to Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, etc., I think the difference is that I had to work really hard to find out what that meant. I had to go to the library and check out magazines and scour them for what was cool, whereas my cousin can just get on Instagram and hashtag search fashion or whatever, and I think what I've also noticed is, I idolized a lot of celebrities, but I didn't have access to them the way that her generation does. again, was like magazines or watching MTV News or something. Um, Whereas I know she follows like all of the Kardashians, and of course wants that lifestyle, which is impossible unless you're rich. But I mean, she fights for it. She works for it. Um, but the reason I thought that was interesting is because like while I was reading this particular story about Marcy, I just kept thinking like, well, this is every generation of girls or whatever. And I don't think he really, I don't personally think he delved a whole lot into what I personally think separated like my cousin and my um I don't know, like personal relationship with growing up with social media and not having it. Again, I had IM and um what was the like live journal, but that was such a like personal kind of thing to have. It wasn't so social. um the other the other part of this week that I really like got into, or I guess had an aha about, was the cyberbullying. Um, I had written in my forum post that I think I can be a little empathetic, but I had read that article that said that kids or people in general, they don't have to see face to face like the harm that they're inflicting, and so there's no need for empathy, which I thought was really interesting. But I'm like having a hard time wrapping my brain around like whether or not I am empathetic because I didn't have social media, and so if I bullied or saw someone bully or was bullied myself, was that the catalyst for like me having empathy? And I don't think it was. Like I feel like that's somewhat of an innate trait, or maybe taught by your family. But um, I mean, I guess there's argument that like if you, even if it's innate, even if you're taught that, if you're removed so long from human interaction and human experience, that maybe it does chip away at your empathy. I don't want that to sound doomsday, like, the more kids spend time on their phones, the less empathetic they're gonna be. But I mean, I just thought that was like a really, it was just a really interesting idea. So like, my husband plays video games um, that have like where you can like talk to other people. And I came in the room one day and it was like 15-year-old boys. I could tell they were young. We're talking and they were dropping like really horrible slurs and just like being downright nasty. And I was like, how are you listening to this? I was like, this makes me so mad. And he was like, oh, I just tune it out. And I think like my husband's not a bad person by any means, but he's so much more involved in that culture, like he's played video games his whole life, so he's used to this like weird culture of like down talk to each other, but it goes really far, like it's really negative. um and I didn't do that, like Nintendo was like the last generation of games I played, and you can't talk to people through that. So like maybe your friends would be sitting next to you and you might like trash talk them a little bit, but it was always in good fun. And if one of your friends was like struggling, you knew better. So I mean, I guess in that way I saw like the empathy, creating empathy by being in a personal experience with someone, versus like my husband sitting on the couch playing a video game while 15-year-old boys scream obscenities and he just like tunes it out. I'm incapable of doing that. Like, it sounds like I mommed out. Like, I wanted to call these little boys' parents and tell them the kinds of stuff their kids were saying. But uh, I think that kind of like did that topic in the paper that I read kind of helped me see that with my own children, um, making sure that they have a lot of personal experiences in their life. You know, I'm not anti-technology, I'm not anti-social media, but you do have to balance it. I mean, you have to offer human interaction, you have to offer, you know, just other options, physical options besides just their phones and computers.